what's the difference between an okay Notion workspace and an awesome Notion workspace? UI. How you structure and present your Notion build has an outsized impact on both how you and other users will feel about it. Just think about this Windows 95 versus Apple interface, or Android versus the iPhone, or any random trash bin versus Apple's trash bin. They might all do something similar, but one feels much better to use than the other. And sometimes UI can even add some crucial functionality that helps people cut through the noise and make better decisions. That's exactly what we're going to build today. Here's how you can add a little UI magic to your build using the checkbox method. So, what exactly is the checkbox method? Well, it's a simple approach to create pretty much any type of analytics or statistics right in Notion. You can use it to build a personal assistant, to track your workouts and your exercises, or, like in this case, to build a sales analytics dashboard so you always know exactly how your business is doing. Why should you care about this? Well, Notion is an awesome place to store information. We all love a good database to enter our tasks, clients, content ideas, or, well, Pokemon. But recording information alone isn't enough. You also need a way to make sense of the information and actually act on it. This method allows you to build the exact insights that you need so that at a glance you know everything you need to. That way you'll never lose sight of what actually matters. How does it work? Well, you need 3 things: a checkbox, a separate analytics database, and a gallery view. Let's take a closer look at each step and how you can add it to your Notion workspace. Oh, and with the new Notion formulas, we can actually build this also in just 2 steps, but that's a little bit more complex, so I'm going to show you how that works at the end of the video. First up, the checkbox. In order to calculate your insights, we first need a checkbox. You already know the normal Notion database property, that is a checkbox, and you can manually tick it on or tick it off. But that wouldn't be very scalable to get insights at large for a lot of tasks or a lot of other type of information. But luckily, you can also create checkboxes through Notion formulas. And you can create a checkbox for pretty much anything whenever you can ask Notion a yes or no question. And lucky for you, you can turn pretty much any insight that you're looking for into a yes or no question if you're just a bit creative. Here's how. Here's the sample data that we're going to work with. It's a bunch of sales for my fictional company that sells Notion mugs, and yeah, we have our customer, the value, the date, the quantity, and the order status. Now, when it comes to numbers, so just the value of the money or the quantity, that's fairly easy. We don't even need a checkbox to work with that later. But for all the other things, all the other type of information that we might want to gather, we will need a checkbox. So the way you want to think about it is, okay, what's the type of insight that you would need to collect? And then how can you turn it into a yes or no question? Let's start with the date ones. So for example, in terms of dates, right, you might want to ask yourself, okay, how many orders did I have this week or this month, today, something like that. You could of course also combine them with other things, right? Like how many orders of at least 2 mugs or so did I have this week, but let's start simple. Now, the question of whether like something is in this week or not can be turned into a simple yes or no question simply by asking Notion, well, is this order in today's week? So let's just create this formula property and call this week question mark, and then go into formula editor. And by the way, if you're confused with the new Notion formulas, I have a video in the description for you that walks you through all the changes. Now, as I said, we want to compare whether the date is in this week. So we take our date property, and that alone would only return the date, right? So we need to somehow figure out how we can get the week from this date. And that we can do with the formula.format date. And we can have 2 ways to do it. We can either do that in front of it, right, with our brackets like this. So we can do format date, then we have our date, we do a comma, and then we have the format. And to get the week, it's just one large W, and then we close it all off, and then we click on done, and now we get the calendar week. So now we already know what week the order is in, and we still need to ask Notion now, well, is this week? And to do so, we go back into our formula and type 2 equal signs. And now we get the current week. And we do that by having another format date, and this time taking now. And now is a variable that always has the current timestamp. We will format in the exact same way. We close it off, click on done, And now what you see is it turned into a checkbox, because whenever you have one of these operators like, like equal, bigger than, smaller than, it's a question that Notion has to answer with yes or no. And if it has to answer the question with yes or no, it will return you a checkbox. And now as we can see, everything that's in this week has the checkbox and everything else doesn't. Let's do another example. Maybe we also want to see, okay, how many orders are currently paid? So we can, or like how many things are just received and we need to still deliver them. Maybe that's a more interesting insight. So we go again to our formulas and we set, okay, like waiting for payment. And again, in our formula, we need to have our equal sign, right, to get the yes or no comparison. So we can say, okay, in this case, the status property should equal, and then in quotation marks, because it's text, order received, and then we need to type it exactly as it is in the status field. The same, of course, applies if you have a single select or a multi-select. And now we see as well, everything is checked where our status is on for order received. And if I switch this over to paid, it disappears. Great. Now, you can also go one step further and start combining these things, right? For example, maybe you want to know, okay, how many orders did we have this week that were paid, right? So let's go back to formulas. And it's the exact same approach. So let's say paid this week. We just need to combine things. And we can combine things using the AND operator. The AND operator allows us, if you hover over it, to, as you can see, to have like several true conditions. And if all of the conditions inside equal to true, the whole thing is true. If anything is false inside there, everything is false. So we will go in and say, okay, the first thing that I want to check is whether it is this week. So we could now type the whole formula for this week again, but we can actually also just input our this week property that we already have. That's the first condition. And then the second condition is that we want to have it paid. So in this case, we want to have status, and the status should equal paid. And then we close it all off and click on done. And as you can see, the only thing that is checked is this one, because this is this week and it's paid. But if I also flip this one over to paid, we get a checkbox here as well. Also, if you want to see more examples, I have a blog post linked in the description, and there I go through a lot more scenarios of things that you might want to check with the checkbox method in order to then roll it up in your next step. Now it's time to count all of your checkboxes. And previously, we would have used rollups to roll up all these checkboxes into another database and count them there. And you can still do that, but with the new Notion formulas, we can actually skip that step and have the whole build a bit more leaner. For this, we actually need our separate database. So we just type here /database, and this will be our insights for sales database. And in there, we only need one entry. We can call this one stats. And then the most important thing for this whole thing to work is we need to relate this one entry to all entries in the sales database. So in order to do so, we will go in here and we will create a relation, and we will relate that to sales, and we call this, okay, insights, and we want to show it on the other database and call this, actually this one is supposed to be called insights. That one would be, sales. And then we create the relation. And now we need to connect them all. And if you do it for the first time, right, after you already have data in there, what you can do is you can just hit the box here to select all entries. And then you can go on insights and link it to stats here. Or if insights doesn't show up over there, you can just right click it, right, and then say edit property insights, and that edits all at once. But of course, you don't want to do that if you then continue to add entries. So the two ways that you can make sure that whatever entry you enter into your database always is related to the sales database is first by creating a template, right? And say, okay, template, new sale, and make sure that in the sales template, the insight is always connected to stats. And then turn this template into your default template. And that means whenever you create now a new entry in here, it will automatically link it to insights. That's method one. And method two, what you can do is you can also set a filter on your view and make sure that, okay, insights is always stats. And it will also automatically, if you now create something on this database, link it to stats. And that way, again, you just make sure that everything is automatically connected here and everything gets counted the right way. Okay, so now we can hide this here because we don't need to actually see that part. And then we can now work on getting the information from this database into this database. The next step has gotten a lot easier with the new formulas. Previously, again, you would need to create rollups, but now we can do it directly with a formula. So we create a new formula. And the first thing that we might want to know is, okay, how many sales did we have in total? So let's just count total sales. And in order to do that, we simply take our sales property and then type dot and then length. And what this does is it counts the length of the sales array. Now a relation is an array, there are a lot of different values in there, and each entry in your sales database is one entry in the array. So by counting the length of it, you get how many sales you have in total. Again, if this is confusing, definitely check out the video about formulas that I have in the description that walks you through all of this in more detail. Okay, so we see we have 56 total sales so far. Now we might also want to know how much did we actually sell. And as I mentioned previously, if you just want a normal numbers property here, that's fairly easy. You don't even need a checkbox. You can simply go in here, click on plus, add a formula, and count this as, okay, like let's say total sales volume. And here we can again take sales, but this time we don't want just the normal sales part. We want to have the value from the the actual value property. In order to get that, we type dot and we will type map and we will open up that, and then we put current dot, and now we get access to all the properties in our sales database. And then we can pick the value, and then we could close this off. And if we close it off, that just gives us all the individual sale values as a list, or as an array. That's not too helpful, but what we can do then is we can at the end type dot again to chain on another command and just type sum and close it off, and that will sum up everything. Now, I'm not entirely sure where it gets like this 0.6 here at the end. I think there's a bug somewhere in the math, but still for the most part, that's the correct answer. So we will take the number format, we will actually put it into maybe dollars, and then it also gets properly rounded. So now we know, okay, what is our total sales volume here? Now, how can you get your checkboxes in here? Let's take, for example, the waiting for payment one, but the approach would be the same for anyone where you have a checkbox. So let's get a formula, and let's call this waiting for payment. And then in our formula, we want to take the sales relation, and then we want to make sure that we only grab the values that are relevant for us. So we need to filter them. So we type dot and then filter. And the filter operator in Notion now takes an argument, and if it resolves to true, it will keep an entry, and if it resolves to false, it will remove it. So we say current and then the waiting for payment. That should equal to true if we want to keep it. Now, actually, we don't need to equal to true, because by default, if we just give it this condition like this, it assumes, okay, I should check whether this is true or not. But we can just add it like the equal for true for good measure, because in case you want this to be false, right? If you want to see the opposite, like where you don't wait for payment anymore, then you would need to write it like this. And then we can close it off. And then we see here now a modified array with only the ones where we are waiting for payment. Now, of course, we don't want the values in here. Instead, we want, again, the length. So we type dot length afterwards, and then we'll now count the values in here, and we get actually our numbers, and we see, okay, in 12 cases, we are waiting for our payment. And this is really the big unlock with checkboxes plus the new formulas, right? So as long as you can ask a yes or no question, you can then use this method of first filtering for it to be true or false, and then calling length on it to count how many checkboxes exist in your database, and that way get insights about pretty much anything your heart desires. Let's take this one step further just to show you the sheer power of this approach. What about if you want to not know, okay, like how many payments you're waiting for, but how much outstanding money there is, right? Or how much money you made this week? Well, in order to do this, you need actually another helper property down here. So we go here and we say another formula, and we want to have like payment waiting for this payment, something like that, maybe a better name. And what we want to now do is we want to fill this with the amount of money owed if we are waiting for the payment, because then we can roll up again the sum here. So what we want to do is we want to this type use if, and we want to say, okay, if our waiting for payment is true, right, then we want to fill out the value. If not, we want to fill in 0. And then we click on done. And that means now we have money only in those columns where we are actually waiting for payment, and all the other ones will be 0. So then we can go up here and we can again go to our formulas and say like, okay, outstanding payments. And we can go into our formulas, and now we can take sales. We can take the, we need to do then map. We take current, and then out of current, we take our newest property, right, waiting for this payment. And then we can close it off. And then we call sum on it to count it all. So it's similar to the total sales approach over here. And then we can close it. And now we see at a glance, okay, this is the amount of payments that we are currently owed. And you can, of course, like now mix and match the checkboxes with this if statement for pretty much anything, right? If you want to see, okay, like how many sales did I have this week, you would combine this week with the money approach here. Or if you wanted to check, okay, how many things did I sell, then you would probably say something like, okay, quantity is larger than 1 to see how many multiple orders you had, and so on and so on. Now you have all the numbers to work with, but the information isn't displayed in a very nice way. And here's where Notion's gallery view comes in. With this step, you can turn simple numbers into amazing visual UI elements. Before actually adding the gallery, let's first make sure that our numbers are a bit more insightful. And what I mean by that is like, if you just see the number alone, we might not actually know what it stands for. So we want to have some explainer text with it. And we can do that super easily with a very simple formula. So we go in here, do formula, and call this display. And then whatever it is, so let's say total sales. And then build the simple formula. In this case, we need join. And join has a slightly complex syntax. You see in here, we need to give it an array, so within these cornered brackets, and then we need to give it a separator. So whatever it is then in the array will be listed after each other as a text with the separator in between. So if it's a bit complicated, check out the blog post in the description. There I have them all for you to copy paste and to look at. But let's build this actually. So we open our normal bracket, then we open our cornered bracket, and then we type whatever text we want. So first, like, let's say total sales, okay, comma, and then we take the number, total sales. And then we close it off with our curly brackets and with corner brackets, close it, then a comma to give it now the separator, and in between total sales and the actual number, we just want a space. So we can do it like that, and then we can close everything off, and then we can click on done, and then we see, okay, total sales 56. Awesome. Let's actually add like the colon here and an emoji in here. So let's go for maybe the fire emoji. The money emoji, total sales. Awesome. Click on done. And now we have here total sales 56. Great. That's the first part. Let's do another one just as another example. So we again take formula, display, and take like the sales earnings, right? So how much did we make? And again, we go here, we do join, open our normal brackets, open our corner brackets, and then first say, okay, total earnings. And then after that, we can do our total sales volume, close that off, and again, do our separator, and then close that off. Now, if you do that, you'll see we have this weird bug again with the 6 because it's not rounded. So in order to fix that, what we can do is we can simply chain on our total sales volume dot round, right, in order to have this rounded. So then we have our normal number. And now the last thing that we might want to know have is actually the like a currency symbol, right? So if we wanted after this the dollar sign, we can go in here and do a comma, right, and add another element, the dollar sign, and close that off. You see though now we have a space between them, right? Because that's the problem with this new method. We give it all the elements and we have the same separator all the time. So in this case, where you have something where you want to have it directly adjacent to a number, you actually can just have like an empty curly brackets here that would push everything together, and then just go in here and add a space after total earnings, and then everything will be spaced out correctly with the dollar sign. Okay, so that's how you create the display property before you turn it into a gallery. Now finally time for this gallery. So let's click on the 3 dots and turn our database here into a gallery. Let's make sure the database title is hidden and our card preview is set to none. We can then adjust the card size depending on how much things we need here, but for now this will be good. And then we can go in and turn on the properties that we want to see. And this is where the real magic happens. So now we just turn on our 2 display properties, and we have here our automatically updating insights for our total sales and our total earnings, right? So if this customer actually spent 2K, you see our number here automatically updates in real time. And again, this approach is super modular. So you can create these sort of insights for anything that you want. Whether it is in your database, you have workouts and you want to count how many workouts and like how often you do them per week, or you want to count your open tasks and how many you've done today. Or in this case with sales, you can do pretty much anything and you can add as many information in here as you want. Even better, you can treat this gallery element here now as a widget and embed it anywhere in your Notion workspace, wherever you want to see it. Not necessarily on the sales page, but right, for example, if you have a company home and everyone sees this homepage first, you could embed on there the current performance of the company or key stats. And yeah, that way really create the insights in the right location at the right time. Speaking of awesome UI and incredible visuals, quick shout out to this week's sponsor, Gamma. Gamma is an awesome AI-powered slide builder, but it's also so much more. You can think about it a bit as if Notion and Canva had a kid, and that kid somehow learned how to use ChatGPT and Midjourney. Their AI tool makes it super easy to get started with a presentation, and then afterwards you just have a really good presentation builder. Everything is a block like a Notion, so you can move things around and customize everything to your needs. Overall, a really awesome tool, and I've recorded actually a dedicated walkthrough of how you can use Gamma to create a Notion-inspired presentation. Gamma also has an awesome free plan, so definitely recommend you check it out. The link is in the description. Now, as promised, there's an even shorter way to build this with the new formulas. Here, you could ditch the checkboxes and just build it all into one giant formula into your analytics database. Personally, I still prefer checkboxes because it's a little bit easier to troubleshoot and where things go wrong. Plus, I would have to come up with a new name if there are no checkboxes in the checkbox method anymore. But either way, here's how you could do it all in one formula. Let's take our example with the order received, so how many outstanding payments we have. So we can go in here and we could build this simply by taking sales and then saying dot and then take filter and then again our current. And now instead of what we previously done, right, we did now the checkbox and said whether that's true. Now, instead of doing that, we can just rebuild the condition that we had in the checkbox in here. So in that case, that would mean status equals and then order received. Order received, close it off, and then here have at the end then the dot length statement. And as you can see, that gets us the exact same result. But we could now delete the waiting for payment property in here. We don't need that checkbox anymore. And for a simple condition like this, that's actually probably the better way to go because it's much simpler and cleaner to do. It's just that if your statement that you wrap into the checkbox or with the helper property that we had here with the numbers, if you do that and then you try to rebuild it all in here, it can quickly get cumbersome. Just as an example, let's say you wanted to check how many orders you got that are waiting for payment for more than one order, right? So it's two conditions. If you have to rebuild it then in here, what you need to do is you need to do and in here, right? Because it's two things. And we have first current status received, and then we have current dot the quantity is larger than 1 and close that off. And then click on done. And again, now we're on 8, right? So again, this might still be possible, but now it's already much more complicated to read in here. And if you have to troubleshoot something because something went wrong, it's a lot easier if you have this outsourced into its own checkbox property in here and then just count the checkboxes over there. But again, just wanted to show you this even cleaner way if you want to reduce the number of properties in your workspace as much as possible. Having analytics in Notion is an awesome superpower, but you're still lacking a sort of visual element. Oftentimes, numbers alone don't tell the full story. Luckily, it's actually super easy to get awesome graphs and charts into Notion. Here's a full walkthrough of the best methods for each Notion level. Just click here and I'll see you in the next video about Notion charts.